Toad Tale. These are stories that are left at our doorstep every morning by the former of our group, one Chuckleberry Flynn. This one's number 12, Clementine in Tahoe. The microwave in the lobby of the Carson City Best Western crapped out at exactly 7:35 a.m., leaving Clementine with a jar of partially melted Cheese Whiz and a gastronomic dilemma. Clementine would only dip pork rinds in fully melted Cheese Whiz, and eating plain pork rinds without Cheese Whiz was, you know, just gross. And forget about spooning the salvageable stuff out of the jar. On more than one occasion, Clementine had found herself fishing the end of a broken plastic spoon from the jar with her index finger. This is a problem because when exposed to oxygen, Cheese Whiz hardens and becomes almost permanently lodged underneath an acrylic nail. Plus, if you ever plan on opening that jar of Cheese Whiz again, you'll be greeted by the impression of your own fingerprint in the greasy orange ooze, which is, you know, just gross. So Clementine went back to her room, put on a pair of flip-flops, and proceeded across the I-395 overpass to a dingy 7-Eleven with a functional microwave. Once the state of her cheese product had been altered from more or less solid to more or less liquid, she sat down on the curb outside the store, opened the bag of pork rinds, and at last began her morning ritual. Clementine was adhering to a strict dietary regimen that summer on account of the plus-sized water skiing gig she had landed in Tahoe. The show was called Barry's Nautical Nymphs and consisted mostly of Clementine putting on a mermaid costume and sitting atop an inflatable plastic oyster shell being dragged around by a pontoon boat. It was a pretty sweet deal. Clementine's boss, Barry, was a nice enough guy, a former superintendent of schools out in Michigan. Barry won $275 on a scratch-off card once and had been trying to replicate that luck ever since. He told everybody that he won the pontoon boat off some guy named Fritz at a poker game in Reno. But one night, after a couple of shots of tequila, Barry confessed to Clementine that the pontoon boat was actually part of his divorce settlement and the nymphs business was inherited from his Uncle Ned. Turns out Barry's Nautical Nymphs was at one time part of a much more successful venture called Ned's Naughty Nautical Nymphos, a strip joint out by the airport where the girls danced around in kiddie pools while lap dances were performed on a slip and slide. Barry's Uncle Ned left the Naughty Nympho business after an epic Paul on the Damascus Road conversion incident. Ned bought an Ovation guitar, learned to play C, G, and D, and was now a full-time youth minister in Colorado Springs. It was not clear how the nymphs made the leap from kiddie pool to pontoon boat, but you know, a gig is a gig. She had Mondays off, which meant she'd head up to the Lovelock Correctional Center today to visit Earl. Earl had been good to Clementine. It was 'cause of Earl she had the mermaid gig in that halfway decent room at the Best Western, microwave notwithstanding. A few years ago, Clementine had had a little misunderstanding with a used car mogul named Nevada Fats, and she asked Earl to arbitrate on her behalf. As a result of that arbitration, Earl was serving a 15-month stint at Lovelock. Of course, she felt terrible. So, to make up for the inconvenience of his incarceration, Clementine made the weekly pilgrimage up I-80 East to a dreary visitation room where she, Earl, and 8 other pairs of remorseful souls would discuss release dates in hushed anticipation. These visits to Earl often concluded with an assignment regarding Earl's investments. Clementine had been entrusted with Earl's holdings at 4 or 5 gaming institutions around the Silver State. She also made occasional visits to construction sites and massage parlors, and she maintained a standing date in the parking lot of a Pack and Save with some twitchy dude named Joshi from the Nevada State Office of Renewable Energy. Clementine was between vehicles at the moment, but she had a cadre of all too eager associates to call upon when she required transportation. Her preferred chauffeurs were Gus and Roger, a towering pair of leathery, pockmarked, mustachioed actors who did a Sam Peckinpah-inspired gunfight bit outside the Delta Saloon every Thursday night in Virginia City. It was a gory affair and had earned several public indecency citations from the local magistrate. No small feat in a town where the sidewalk is tacitly considered the other urinal. Gus and Roger were co-owners of a sweet 1983 Caprice Classic, which, as long as Clementine concentrated her girth in the dead center of the back seat, took to the curves of Mount Rose like no other car, due to the increased rear percentage. She called to see if they were available, knowing that in 10 minutes, Gus and Roger would be dutifully waiting in the lobby of the Best Western. Gus and Roger always let Clementine choose the music, so she packed 3 mixed tapes of her favorite Phil Collins songs, a pair of leopard sunglasses, and a bottle of Sally Hansen Plum Luck nail polish. Sadly, the trip to 7-Eleven had been murder on her toenails. Once they were on the road, Gus gently inserted Phil Collins into the tape deck. They were silent during the first 3 minutes and 20 seconds of In the Air Tonight. Phil Collins' echo-affected tenor and the hypnotic synthesizer ostinato kept the passengers rapt. Well, if you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend, but I don't know if you know who I am. But once he was there and saw with his own 2 eyes the pack of lies, the ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-bum-bum drum solo snatched the passengers out of their reverie. Gus rolled the windows down, goosed it up to about 105 miles per hour, and they all belted out the final chorus. I can feel it coming in the air tonight, oh Lord. Drowning out Mr. Collins, they pounded on every available surface of the Caprice's interior, which to them had become a rolling drum kit that easily rivaled anything Tommy Lee ever banged. About halfway to Lovelock, even though all the Caprice's windows were all the way down, Roger started to bitch about the odor of Clem's wet nail polish. She ignored him, instead focusing on an even application while mouthing the lyrics of Against All Odds. They rolled into the visitor parking lot of the Lovelock Correctional Center around 2 p.m. Clementine climbed out of the Caprice, closed the door with her hip, and checked herself in the side view mirror. Roger leaned his head out of the window and said,
"Hey, Clem, you make sure and tell Earl we said howdy, okay?"
She gave him a little peck on the cheek, nodded, and headed for the visitor entrance. By now, Clementine was familiar with the security protocols at Lovelock. She knew a few of the guards and had become accustomed to the weirdly comforting rituals that went along with these visitations. Doors open in the same order. You sign your name in the same place. You answer the same questions every time. She couldn't help but wonder whether Earl might actually like the orderliness of a place like this. Lord knows Earl was always trying to assert order on the outside, to control things and people. He'd never say so, but she wondered if he might find a little comfort in a place where he didn't make all the decisions, where other people told you when to eat or where to sleep. Of course, even in here, Earl was controlling things on the inside and on the outside. This little prison stint merely provided Earl with one more angle. It took him about a month to figure out how to secure these weekly visits, and another month for Earl and Clementine to choreograph the kabuki-like process of gestures and nods that indicated which guard to trust, which drop to make, and which bet to place. Each time she came to Lovelock, she noticed more people watching, more people offering their assistance. It was Tommy Davenport, Jr. that greeted her at the main entrance. Tommy was a pink-cheeked kid who looked like unbaked biscuit dough stuffed inside a prison guard uniform. Tommy handled her paperwork and led her to the visitation room. As he unlocked the reinforced steel door, he looked around for anybody who could possibly overhear him, and then he whispered, "Hey, Clem, put in a good word for me with Earl, okay?" She nodded, but didn't look at him as she entered the room. Earl stood up as she entered, beaming as always. "Hi, Mama," he said. "Hi, baby. I brought you some pork rinds." Earl gave his mother a kiss and set upon devouring the pork rinds. She had no idea how anybody could stomach pork rinds without cheese whiz, because eating just plain pork rinds without cheese whiz was, just gross. But for now, she was just happy to see that he was eating. He looked so scrawny in that orange jumpsuit.